Sometimes you gotta get your guys. And my first must-have player is going to be Bijan Robinson, who I was super enthralled with last year for fantasy football as a rookie. I said he was Timothy, and the first round draft capital that you had to splurge onto Bijan Robinson really did pan out when he ended up being the RB17 on a points per game basis last season. And hear me out. The Arthur Smith show was just not worth it for Bijan Robinson, even though he did have 214 attempts, even though he did average 4.6 yards per carry, and he did have 8 total touchdowns. The overall workload, especially when we were looking at the splits between Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson, and Bijan Robinson, made a lot to be desired. Even though Bijan Robinson surprisingly had a 68% snap percentage, it just felt like a lot of times he wasn't getting those really important opportunities. Now, the one part about Bijan Robinson that I absolutely love going into 2024 is he is the RB2 on Underdog, coming off the board right behind CMC, overall pick 7. And so a lot of people have been debating Breece Hall versus Bijan Robinson in your fantasy football drafts. The thing is, for me with Bijan, that makes me so excited is the fact that he was RB3 on targets last year with 86 targets. We talked about in these PPR formats how important it is for you as a fantasy football manager to have a running back that has ultimate level upside. And I think Bijan Robinson has that. Not only now then do we add in Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix to be 2 better quarterbacks than Bijan Robinson played with last year. We also got a whole new coaching staff, get rid of Arthur Smith. I'm pumped for Bijan Robinson, and I have him as one of my must-have guys in 2024 fantasy football. We're running it back. I'm ready to get hurt again, but I think the upside is somewhere like a 2007 LaDainian Tomlinson for Bijan Robinson to figure out. My second must-have player for fantasy football is going to be Nico Collins. And Nico Collins is currently going off in the back end of the second round in underdog drafts, and we've talked about how the second round this year in redraft leagues, it feels kind of icky. It feels like there's not a lot of clear direction, where in the last few years we felt like it was a little bit deeper. The second round's kind of hit or miss, but Nico Collins to me feels like an absolute great value when he's coming off the board as wide receiver 13, overall player 19. And when we're looking at his points per game, last year he was the wide receiver 7. And anybody that has tuned into any type of content this offseason, you've heard people say, well, I'm just worried about the target share. I'm worried about Nico Collins playing with a guy like Stephon Diggs and a guy like Tank Dell. Here are the splits last year with Tank Dell versus without Tank Dell. Nico Collins actually played better. Now add on to the fact that we have Nico Collins, who only had 109 targets last year, put up wide receiver 7 numbers. If we take a look at RotoViz projection, we're projecting Nico Collins to get somewhere around 135 targets this next year, upping the receptions. Now, his yards per reception, which was at 16.2, actually goes down just a little bit, but he is still getting the volume. And so I think for me, when I look at Nico Collins, I think it's only up from here. I think the value in the second round's exceptional for a guy like Nico Collins playing with CJ Stroud. And I got CJ Stroud's jersey right behind me, so maybe I'm being a little bit biased to the Houston Texans, but I'm excited for Nico Collins heading into this year 4 for him. Think he can just continue to take the top off of the defenses. My third must-have player for fantasy football is going to be Travis Etienne. And Travis Etienne was a league winner for the majority of last season. I mean, he was RB7 on a points per game basis. Literally started off 21 fantasy points in week 1, 17 fantasy points in week 3. Week 4 had 10, 36 fantasy points in week 5, 23 fantasy points in week 6. Week 7 had 22, 25 in week 8. And then it kind of started to trickle off down from there. So a lot of people are saying now with Tank Bigsby going into year 2 that, hey, if you look at the actual metrics of Travis Etienne, his snap share ended up going down as we got later on into the season. And once his snap share started to go down, the overall fantasy football upside started to level off, which I understand and I hear all of those agreements. I just think Travis Etienne is a little bit too talented to be keeping off the field in some of these third down situations that a lot of people are saying that he doesn't need to have, because last year he really upped his receptions. He had 58 receptions last year. And we talked about Travis Etienne when he was coming out of the University of Clemson as an Alvin Kamara light type running back, where he could have 70 to 75 receptions in a given year. Now, we're going to have to see if that actually ends up happening, because last year's yards per carry went down to 3.8. But if he could have a little bit of a bump in receptions, we're talking about Travis Etienne being able to crack the top 5 running backs in fantasy football. But the part that makes me really excited is you get to draft him as running back 10. So you don't even have to get like a top 6, top 7 running back pick on him. You're able to get him a little bit lower. So I absolutely love Travis Etienne, especially now. We'll have to see how adding Gabe Davis, BTJ into this offense does. I mean, still got Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, but Travis Etienne is going to be a main factor, and I'm super pumped to see what Travis Etienne can do in 2024 fantasy football. Let me know what you think of Travis Etienne down below. My fourth must-have player is going to be Chris Godwin, and Chris Godwin is a player that a lot of people kind of forget. Back in 2019, he was the wide receiver 2 on a points per game basis. Now, a lot has changed for Chris Godwin. Not only do we not have Jameis Winston back from 2019, we don't have Tom Brady anymore, but we do have Baker Mayfield. And last year was a pretty down year with wide receiver 34, 12.4 points per game numbers, which wasn't great. 131 targets, though. I will want to say this about Chris Godwin. My man always commands targets. 131 last year, 142 the year before that, 128. When he's like fully healthy, he is a guy that can get you anywhere between 130 to 150 targets. Now, none of the metrics from last year are really going to scream that Chris Godwin is really going to be outperforming his ADP, but the reason that I really like Chris Godwin outperforming his ADP and being one of my must-have guys is because there's been all the talks that they're going to move Chris Godwin back to the slot. And Chris Godwin's coming off the board as wide receiver 36. I think we could see Chris Godwin getting back into that like back-end top 20 wide receivers on a points per game basis. So the fact that you're able to draft him at wide receiver 36, wide receiver 37, it feels like a really great steal. Now, Chris Godwin is getting up there in age. He is 28 years old, so he is entering that prime of his career. I know a lot of people are worried about Chris Godwin, but they're pumped for Mike Evans. I think Chris Godwin gets a resurgence this year. I'm pumped. I have him as a must-have guy. Absolutely love targeting him when I get to like the 6th round of my underdog drafts. My next must-have player is going to be Rashee RIce. And hear me out with Mr. Rashee. A lot of people are leaving him to dead. We don't know what this situation is going to be happening with his criminal lawsuit, but what we do know is that Mr. Rashee RIce, wide receiver 41 on underdog, going at pick 69. And I just continue to draft him because I think he's the ultimate level alpha for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And the thing is, when we have to consider this about the Kansas City Chiefs offense, a lot of people are putting Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is the only clear alpha, and we saw Rashee RIce build himself such a nice connection with Mr. Pat Mahomes, and putting up wide receiver 28 numbers on wide receiver 33 targets is actually really incredible for a guy like Rashee RIce. He had a target rate of wide receiver 12. When you really start to dive into the metrics like wide receiver 7 on red zone targets, wide receiver 3 in yards after the catch, he was super efficient with the opportunities that he got. So just imagine if he got a little bit more opportunities this year. We're talking about Rashee RIce stepping into that clear wide receiver 1 alpha role as you have Xavier Worthy, as you have Hollywood Brown stretching out the defense, having Travis Kelce on the other side, having Travis Kelce and Rashee RIce working those intermediate routes. Makes me super pumped for Rashee RIce in fantasy football. And I know there's a lot of risk here with Rashee RIce coming in over the next few days, next few months, as we don't know. Is he going to be missing a few games this season? I think the value at what you're getting a guy like Rashee RIce makes it worth it. I've been trading for Rashee RIce like everywhere in some of my redraft leagues and some of my dynasty leagues. So make sure you go get some Rashee RIce. I am feeling very good about Rashee RIce's current value, and I have him as a must-have. And my final must-have player we're going to be talking about in today's video. So if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. We are trying to grow this channel as we approach redraft season, helping you win some fantasy football leagues. Is going to be Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert feels like a guy that's being absolutely left for dead when we look at the underdog current rankings right now, where Justin Herbert is going at QB 17. He just continues to fall, going behind guys like Tua, Jared Goff, going ahead of guys like Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford. And I hear you, he's playing with Jim Harbaugh, new head coach who absolutely loves to run the ball, and he's throwing the ball to Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey. It's not great. It's absolutely not great. It's probably the worst receiving core we've seen any quarterback have. We think Josh Allen has a terrible receiving core. Well, just look at Justin Herbert. But the thing that we have to remember about Justin Herbert in his 4 years in the NFL is his worst season, which was in 2022. He finished as QB 15 on a points per game basis. QB 15. Now, the big argument about that is he did have 699 passing attempts, so he was throwing the ball to the field. So a lot of people are saying, well, he's not going to have those amount of passing attempts, and he's not going to have the volume or the yards per attempt or the passing touchdowns to really supplement and drive him up the fantasy football draft board. When you're looking at guys in that range, like, are we saying that Justin Herbert is not a talented quarterback? Like, I think Justin Herbert's talented, more talented than Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Tua, Jared Goff. You could actually probably make the argument that Justin Herbert's a top 5 talent in the NFL. So are we really going to let the situation and the weapons surrounding him impact his overall value to the point that we are pushing him down the boards, even though we know that he has top tier upside? Listen, you don't even have to draft him as your QB1. He can be your QB2. The fact that you can draft Justin Herbert as your QB2, you can get a guy like Jaden Daniels who has ultimate level upside as a rookie, and then say, you know what, I'm going to get Justin Herbert as my backup plan, as an insurance policy. That's insane, because I think Justin Herbert's going to end up being your starter most of the season, because I think Justin Herbert's going to surprise a lot of people based on this ADP. And I absolutely love some Justin Herbert. So let me know what you think of these must-have players down below. Let me know if I'm crazy. Let me know if you're drafting Justin Herbert. I want to hear your thoughts down below. Here are 2 more videos you should check out. If you haven't checked them out already, hit that like and subscribe button, put out more content. Happy early 4th of July, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your day off if you have it off, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.